There exists a hunger so ancient, it wears the mask of virtue. I have encountered countless empaths whose greatest fear is not pain but irrelevance. Beneath that terror I consistently discover a wounded child, neglected, invisible, desperate not to be discarded. You name it compassion, but I recognize it as a survival strategy. When your existence depends upon being essential to others, you are not loving, you are negotiating for your life. Until you acknowledge the wound that drives your service, you will continue mistaking emotional slavery for spiritual calling. Do you understand why you yield so readily to others' demands? Why your heart expands beyond its natural limits for those who offer nothing in return? Do you comprehend why your very being seems contingent upon being indispensable, irreplaceable, perpetually valuable? You call it empathy. Society labels it sensitivity, but I, speaking from the depths of analytical psychology, recognize it as elaborate camouflage, beautifully crafted certainly, but suffocating nonetheless, forged in the crucible of early abandonment. You sensitive soul who absorbs too much must now journey with me into the psychological underworld where your empathy was born, not as celestial endowment, but as adaptation to emotional chaos. It is no coincidence that the empath moves through life with heightened attunement, a radar calibrated not merely to suffering, but to dependency itself. The empath does not simply witness distress, they internalize it, process it, and mistake this absorption for divine purpose. This confusion between pain and meaning becomes the cornerstone of many spiritually oriented lives that have not yet recognized that they were conditioned by trauma to believe their value lies in being the solution to others' problems. In Jungian terms, this represents a complex and autonomous cluster in the unconscious where memory, emotion, and archetype fuse together to create compulsive patterns. The need to be needed is not conscious virtue, it is psychological possession. Listen now, not with your analytical mind, but with what the ancients called the nous, the eye of the soul. What I must convey requires bypassing your defenses. You were once a small being whose instincts recognized that love should flow freely. But that love came with conditions attached. You learned that visibility required performance, that safety demanded pleasing, that acceptance meant anticipating others' needs before they even formed them. Your sensitivity, so exquisitely tuned, was not divine grace. It was nervous system adaptation to an emotionally unstable environment. This is not an accusation against your character. This is not fault-finding. This is recognition of your inheritance. And it weighs heavily on your spirit. What we often identify as the empathic nature is frequently the unmothered child inhabiting an adult form. The child who became parent to their own parents. The child who transformed their very skin into a reflecting surface so others might see themselves clearly enough to permit that child's continued presence in the room. This child grows into the adult who cannot refuse requests, who experiences guilt during rest, who magnetizes toward the broken, the chaotic, the unstable, and because that emotional language was their first vocabulary, thus emerges the wounded healer archetype. But beware, if the wound remains unintegrated, the healer will mend others while silently hemorrhaging. Let us venture deeper into the cavern where understanding casts revealing shadows. The empath's compulsion toward being needed originates not solely in benevolence. It represents psychological strategy. It is the psyche's survival contract. If I am indispensable, I cannot be discarded. This truth is inscribed upon the walls of the unconscious. Here lies the genesis of the martyr archetype, not as saint, but as a sacrificial mechanism. The trauma-bonded empath equates indispensability with security. They make themselves essential at work, in relationships, within families. They become the resolver, the one who remembers significant dates, who reads between unspoken lines, who always answers midnight calls. In this constant bending, they remain perpetually unmet. How can one be truly encountered when they are always shape-shifting, responding to others' requirements? The empath in this state exists without self-knowledge, beyond their utility to others. This represents profound crisis. The authentic self, the self with a capital S in Jungian psychology, is not discovered through perpetual giving. It emerges through the sacred process of individuation, the inward pilgrimage where one encounters both divine and demonic aspects within. Envision this dream, for dreams provide the royal pathway to unconscious revelation. A woman traverses an endless desert, arms extended, palms exposed pleadingly. She discovers a settlement where inhabitants lie suffering and starving. She rushes between them, placing hands upon wounds, offering her blood, her sustenance, her breath. They heal, but she deteriorates. Her skin cracks, bones protrude, yet she continues, smiling. In the final scene, she collapses beneath an ancient tree. The villagers celebrate, restored and vibrant, but none looks back. She dissolves into sand. Tell me, was she saint or spectre? This becomes the destiny of the unexamined empath. This is the imagery your unconscious may present when your persona, the social mask you wear, over-identifies with the helper, rescuer, the virtuous one. But what lies beneath that mask? What fury, what grief, what exhaustion? The unconscious cannot be deceived. It recognizes when your giving represents a plea to be witnessed. It will whisper or scream until you listen. The psyche does not fabricate. It transmits symbols, symptoms, and synchronicities as alerts. You may find yourself repeatedly drawn to people who drain you, to lovers who do not reciprocate, to friendships where you perpetually listen but never receive hearing. This is not misfortune. This is not random occurrence. This is reflection. The external world mirrors internal conviction. I must earn love. I must earn rest. I must earn the right to remain. But you are weary, are you not? That exhaustion behind your eyes stems not merely from sleepless nights. It comes from the burden of constant availability, always being the one who holds space, even when no one holds space for you. This is not nobility. This is soul erosion. I am here to declare this must cease, not through bitterness, not through rejection, but through profound reclamation of the self you abandoned to secure approval. Let us examine the mother archetype. Not the literal mother, but the primordial image within. The empath embodies a distorted mother archetype, one who gives endlessly and forgets to receive. But the true mother nourishes and rests. She understands cycles, not constancy. She knows to offer milk only after nourishing herself. You must re-internalize this archetype in healthy form, otherwise you become what alchemists warned against, one who seeks to transmute others' lead into gold while remaining covered in soot. This represents the empath's shadow, the resentment brewing in silence, the unspoken expectation that others will eventually recognize all you've done and reciprocate accordingly. But this fantasy lacks foundation in reality. It is based on a childhood wound that has never been seen, honored, or aggrieved. That grief must be felt. You must weep not for those who hurt you, but for the self that was never allowed simply to exist. The self that was only permitted presence if it proved useful. Now you ask, what should you do? But that remains the voice of the wounded helper, always doing, always fixing. I say, do nothing. Sit with the wound, examine the reflection. Ask, who am I if I am not needed? Let that question disturb you. Let it disorient you. This is the beginning of rebirth. In Jungian psychology, we speak of the individuation process, the sacred task of becoming who you truly are, distinct from inherited roles, worn masks, adapted to pain. For the empath, individuation means separating compassion from compulsion. It means discerning where your giving ends and your being begins. It means saying no even when your entire nervous system trembles. It means allowing others to disappoint you and discovering that their disappointment will not destroy you. This is the spiritual threshold the empath must pass through, the fire of solitude. You must become acquainted with being unnecessary. You must taste insignificance, not as punishment, but as liberation. Only then will you know your love not for what you provide, but for who you are. Only then will you step out of trauma-bonded patterns and into sacred solitude where the self can speak. I have witnessed this repeatedly in clinical practice and then shared dreams. The one who stops overgiving begins dreaming of water, still water, clear pools, return to the womb. Or they dream of wild animals, wolves, lions, untamed creatures, symbols of their reclaimed instinctual self. These are not fantasies. They are messages. The unconscious rejoices when you reclaim your life force, the resistance and rebirth. Yes, the unconscious rejoices, but not without resistance, when the empath begins refusing, withdrawing their caretaking energy. Deep anxiety surfaces, primal, ancient, encoded into the body itself. It is the fear of annihilation. This is the inner child's voice whispering, if I am not useful, I will not be loved. If I do not please, I will be punished. If I take space for myself, I will be erased. The voice does not respond to logic. It responds to presence. It needs holding, not by another, but by the emerging adult within you. The self no longer willing to live in bondage to childhood roles. In the language of dreamwork and archetype, we say the inner child must be retrieved from the forest where it was abandoned. That forest is symbolic, the dark, wild terrain of the unconscious, where instinct meets memory, where the soul remembers what the mind has forgotten. In that forest, your true self waits, not the empath perpetually performing, but the one who once knew how to play, how to rest, how to receive. The moment you stop organizing your life around others' needs, you enter the forest. You wander, you're afraid, but you're also free. The trees do not demand productivity. The animals do not require fixing. The wind does not need your apologies. You are for the first time a being among beings. In that sacred wilderness the self speaks, not in words but in symbols, in silence, in spontaneous emotion. It whispers, "You are not here to be needed. You are here to be whole." But the persona resists, the persona, the mask we show the world, for the empath is kindness, helpfulness, tirelessness. It is the one who never angers, who never asks for anything, who gives and gives and gives. When the persona is threatened, when you begin reclaiming your energy, it feels like death, and because in a way, it is death of the false self. And all death in the psyche precedes rebirth. Do you recall the myth of Inanna, the Sumerian goddess who descended into the underworld to face her sister Ereshkigal, the shadow aspect of herself? Inanna was stripped of her garments at each gate, humiliated, emptied, ultimately killed before being reborn. This is the empath's journey. You must dissolve. You must be stripped of your roles, your compulsions, your need to be needed. You must face the sister, the shadow, the part of you that resents, that rages, that longs. You must not banish her, you must bow. For in the empath's rage lies sacred truth. I gave too much. In the grief, no one came for me. In the longing, I want to be seen, not for what I do, but for who I am. These are not shameful truths. They are holy. They are the threshold between the adaptive self and the authentic one. Let us examine the lover archetype, and not merely romantic lover, but a universal force of union, connection, erotic aliveness. The empath in their trauma wound confuses lover's energy with obligation. They mistake fusion for intimacy. They give without boundaries and call it devotion. But the true lover knows self-possession. The true lover says, "I bring all of me to the table, not to be consumed, but to be met." This for the healing empath is the turning point. To move from being absorbed by others' needs to being sovereign in one's own field. I must speak now of projection. This is how the unconscious speaks through our relationships. The empath often projects their own unhealed inner child onto others. They see the wounded boy, the fragile girl, the neglected soul, and rush to save them. But this act, while noble in appearance, is psychologically dishonest. It is not the other who needs saving. It is the empath's own inner child crying through the mirror of the other. When you project, you do not love the person. You love their symbol. You love what they represent in your unconscious drama. The work becomes this: to withdraw projections, to look into the eyes of the one you are trying to save and say, "This is not mine," to feel the emptiness that follows, to sit in the space where the helper identity once lived and ask again, "Who am I now?" This emptiness is not void, it is womb. It is space from which new life emerges. The alchemists understood this. They called it the nigredo, the blackening, the decomposition of the false before the birth of the real. Just as prima materia must be broken down before gold can form, so must your compulsions dissolve before the self can shine. Do not fear this dissolution. Yes, you will weep. Yes, you will feel lost. Yes, you will question everything. But this is sacred confusion before clarity, sacred darkness before dawn. In time, you will feel something new arise. Not a frantic desire to help, but a quiet joy of presence. Not a need to be needed, but the peace of being. I must tell you this, the healed empath does not stop caring. They do not become cold or selfish or closed. They become discerning. They become rooted. they become whole. From that wholeness, their empathy becomes a gift, not currency. They give not to be loved, but because they are love. Let us imagine another dream. A man walks through a house he does not recognize. Each room fills with people asking for his help. One requests food, another weeps. Another hands him broken objects. He tries meeting their needs, but the more he gives, the more rooms multiply. Finally, exhausted, he sits down. Then from behind a hidden door a voice whispers, "Come here." He follows the voice into a small room, empty, quiet. There is a mirror. He looks into it and sees himself as a child, smiling. The child says, "I've been waiting." This is the moment of return, when you stop running from emptiness, when you stop chasing affirmation through service, when you meet yourself naked, unadorned, not needed but real. This is the birth of the self. In that moment, you may find your dreams change, no longer filled with chaos or endless tasks, but with symbols of integration, bridges, circles, animals return to wildness, your voice is speaking clearly, your body resting. These are not illusions, they are thresholds. They are the unconscious celebrating your return. Courage and the warrior archetype. But the world may not applaud this transformation. People who once land on you may be confused, even angry. They were attached to the role you played. They may say you've changed, and they are right. You have. You are no longer playing savior. You are no longer sacrificing yourself for crumbs of affection. You are becoming whole, and whole people change systems. You must have courage, for the empath who heals becomes a threat to family dynamics, to codependent lovers, to cultures that praise martyrdom. But do not shrink. You are not here to be digestible. You are here to be real. And realness in a world built on performance is revolution. Do not forget the warrior archetype within you. The warrior does not seek conflict, but they protect the sacred. What is more sacred than your own life force, your own boundaries, your own becoming? Call upon this archetype, stand in its energy, let it hold your spine straight when guilt tells you to bend. You are not created to disappear into others. You were created to be a universe unto yourself. From that center you may choose freely, joyfully, to extend your care. But it will no longer be a bargain. It will no longer be a plea. It will be an offering. If no one accepts it, you will still be whole. This is the paradox. The more you detach from the need to be needed, the more powerful your presence becomes. People can feel when love is free, not entangled. When compassion comes from overflow, not deficit. In that space, your empathy becomes what it was always meant to be. Not a trauma response, but divine resonance, embracing the shadow and collective healing. Yes, your empathy becomes what it was always meant to be, divine resonance, the soul's song no longer distorted by fear of abandonment. But before that melody can sing freely through your life, there remains one final descent, a sacred encounter with the deepest archetype of all, the shadow. The shadow, as I have long described, is not evil. It is simply that which is rejected. It is the part of you you were taught not to be. For the empath, the shadow often contains anger, selfishness, ambition, sexuality, and the terrifying truths of your unmet needs.
Over the years, you disowned them. You tucked them into the unconscious and replaced them with kindness, helpfulness, moral superiority. You wore light like armor and forgot the beauty of your darkness.
But the shadow will not remain silent. It leaks through your tone, your exhaustion, your secret bitterness. It appears in dreams as serpents, devils, or abandoned children. It shows up in relationships as passive aggression or inability to receive. It asks persistently, relentlessly, to be seen. You may resist it. You may say, "But I'm a good person. I help, I love, I serve." And I ask you, must goodness always bleed? Must it always be tired? Or is your goodness a mask for the grief of never having been chosen just for being you? The journey into shadow is the most courageous step an empath can take. It means reclaiming parts of yourself that were once shamed. It means saying, "I deserve space. I deserve rest. I'm allowed to take up room." It means facing parts of you that want to scream and rage and say, "Why did no one see me?" Rather than judging them, you must embrace them. In that embrace, you become whole. Understand this? Wholeness is not sainthood. It is not being perfect. It is being all of who you are, light and shadow, giver and receiver, strong and soft, able to say yes and just as able to say no. When the empath integrates shadow, they become luminous, not because they shine brighter, but because their light is no longer brittle. It is rooted. It is real. The love no longer seeks reward. It arises from depth. The boundaries are not walls, but rivers, clear, flowing, life-giving. You will find, as you do this work, that the world around you begins to shift. Those who only knew how to relate to your giving may fall away. Let them. That is not rejection. That is alignment. In their place will come others, those who meet you as equals, who do not need saving, who see your soul, not just your service. Most importantly, you will meet yourself. You will stand in the mirror, not as a helper, not as the needed one, but as the eternal soul you've always been. You will look into your own eyes and say, "I see you. I will not abandon you again." In that moment, the inner child, the wounded healer, the rejected self, they all come home. Let me offer another image. A dream, perhaps, from the collective unconscious. A great tree stands alone on a hill. Its branches stretch wide, heavy with fruit. People come from all directions to take what they need. The tree gives without protest, but over time its leaves grow thin, its bark peels, it begins to die. One day a wind comes, a great roaring wind, and snaps a branch. People scatter. The tree weeps, but then something strange happens, and the broken branch falls to the soil and takes root. A new tree begins to grow, smaller, yes, but vibrant. It is not visited as often, but it does not mind. It grows slowly, surrounded by silence, touched only by sun and rain. Its roots go deep, so deep that when the next storm comes, it does not break. It sways, it endures. It lives. The sovereign self in the new story. This, beloved listener, is your transformation. From overextended martyr to sovereign being, from compulsive giver to sacred vessel, from being needed to simply being. Yet your ego will protest again. It will say, "If I stop being useful, I will be forgotten." This is the final illusion. You are not loved for your usefulness. You are loved for your essence. If someone only values you for what you provide, they have never truly seen you. Let them go. Set them free. In doing so,
You will set yourself free.
You are not here to rescue everyone. That is not your burden. That is a messiah complex. Another mask trauma wears. You are here to be whole. From that wholeness, you will radiate a different kind of love. Love that empowers rather than enables. Love that mirrors rather than absorbs. Some may say to you, "You've changed." Smile and say, "Yes, I've remembered who I am." You may feel lonely at first. Transformation often brings solitude, but solitude is not abandonment. It is sacred space. A cocoon before flight, silence before song. In that silence, you will feel it, that still small voice, the voice of the self, not frantic, not demanding, just present, just truth. It will say, "You are enough. You have always been enough. Come home." This is the final return. Return not to others, but to yourself. When you walk now into the world, you will not need to be needed. You will simply be. In that being, your presence will heal, not because you try, but because you are whole. The old story's ending, and the story that said you must earn love, must sacrifice to belong, must give to be worthy, that story is over. The new story begins. I am loved. I am whole. I choose when to give, and I choose myself first. Can you feel it? That shift in your chest. That breath you didn't know you were holding. That is the body remembering it is safe to stop performing. You're not selfish. You're sacred. You're not too much. You are precisely enough. You are not made to disappear into others. You are made to exist in fullness. With your permission, the old empath dies tonight, the one born from trauma, who only knew how to survive by pleasing, by healing, by disappearing. In that place rises something holy, a soul in full bloom, a self sovereign and serene, empathy no longer bought with pain but offered in joy. You have returned. Welcome home. The collective implication and embodiment. In this final descent and return, we must consider the greater collective implication of your individual transformation. What you carry is not only a personal wound, it is ancestral, it is mythic, it is archetypal. Your compulsion to be needed is not just your own, it is an echo of generations who survived by erasing themselves, who inherited stories of silence, sacrifice, unworthiness. The empath's pain is often family's pain made visible. A lineage's sorrow finding voice through a single soul, sensitive enough to feel what others deny. As you heal, you do not do so for yourself alone. You do it for the ones who came before and could not. You do it for the children who will come after and must not carry what you were forced to bear. The moment you reclaim your selfhood, you disrupt centuries of codependency, martyrdom, emotional slavery. That is not a small act, that is alchemy. That is revolution. The alchemist knew the transmutation does not occur through force, but through heat, pressure, containment. What is containment psychologically? It is the ability to sit with your discomfort without rushing to escape it. It is holding your own pain without outsourcing it onto others. It is the sacred art of remaining present as the old self dissolves. When the empath begins to practice containment, when you feel the urge to fix and do not act, when you notice guilt and simply breathe, when you hold your own sorrow as if it were the face of God, you step into your royal archetype. Not servant, not beggar, sovereign. The sovereign does not ask permission to exist. The sovereign does not beg for scraps of affection. The sovereign does not perform love to avoid being abandoned. The sovereign radiates worth simply by being. The world bores not in fear, but in recognition. There is a power in you, buried beneath years of self-negation, and it is time to unearth it. But this power is not domination. It is not control. It is not vengeance for having once been unseen. It is grace. It is boundaries made of velvet and steel. It is clarity that speaks without shouting. It is love that does not leak but pours in a chosen direction with sacred intent. As I speak this, I ask you to feel your body, not your thoughts, not your beliefs, your body. It is here that the trauma of being needed lives, in shoulders that cannot relax, in a stomach that tightens when asked for help, in a throat that cannot say no without shaking. Your liberation will not come only through insight. It must come through embodiment. You must learn again how to rest without guilt, how to receive without explanation, how to feel without fixing, how to want without apologizing. This is holy work. This is soul retrieval, and it cannot be rushed. There will be days when you forget, when you say yes too quickly, when the old self knocks on the door wearing the mask of duty, loyalty. Just one more favor. Do not shame yourself. Smile at the visitor. Say, I see you. I thank you, but I no longer live from that place. Return to breath, to stillness, to truth. In time, you will notice something extraordinary. The world will no longer feel so loud. You will no longer feel so overwhelmed, not because it has changed, but because you have. You will walk into rooms and no longer scan for a need. You will sit in conversation and no longer lose your voice. You will look in the mirror and see not a tool for others, but a being infused with divine essence. And you will begin to dream again. Oh, the dreams of a healed empath. What visions they bring. No longer frantic symbolism of being chased, devoured, drained, but images of rivers, of flight, of reunion with self. You may dream of lions resting beside lambs, of hands unclenched, of your child self laughing in the sun. These are not illusions, they are thresholds. They are the unconscious celebrating your return. You may find creativity stirs in new ways. What is empathy? Once freed from compulsion, if not imagination, you may paint, sing, dance again. You may sit in silence and feel joy rise for no reason at all. This is the self expressing itself without the need to be useful. This is soul, not function. Others will notice. Some will feel threatened, confused. They were addicted to your self-sacrifice. They depended on your invisibility. Let them be. Their discomfort is not your burden. Others will be inspired, magnetized by your clarity, your peace. They will ask, how did you do it? You will smile, not with arrogance, but with the humility of one who died and came back. You will say, I stopped abandoning myself. That is the legacy, lies not your perfection, not your unbreakable kindness, but your return to yourself. The healed empath becomes a mirror, not one that distorts to please, but one that reflects truth with tenderness. You will speak truth now, not to hurt, but to liberate. You will set boundaries now, not to punish, but to protect. You will choose relationships not based on who needs you, but on who sees you. That is the difference between entanglement and intimacy. Oh, the intimacy that awaits you now, not just with others, but with your own soul. You will begin to savor solitude. You will no longer fear being alone, for you will be in the company of someone you trust, yourself. Do you see how profound your journey is? You did not merely heal a wound. You broke a generational pattern.
You transmuted a complex. You retrieved a soul. You remembered that love is not something to earn, but something you are.
That is the highest realization of the empath. Not the doing, but the being. Not the gift, but the essence. From that place everything changes, not all at once, not without trembling, but permanently. The old story has no home here anymore.
I say to you now, who once felt needed in order to survive, you are needed by no one. That is your freedom, because now, at last, you are wanted by you. Let that be enough. Let that be your sanctuary. Let that be your throne. When the world next comes to take from your branches, let them find a tree that gives not from compulsion, but from fullness. Let them taste fruit that grew from roots nourished in truth. You are no longer the empath who disappears. You are a soul who has emerged, whole, alive, seen by you.